Do this. Okay. Check, check, check. Check one. 1 second. Okay. So this is what happened is okay, we're back. Ladies and gentlemen. So here I am trying to do another final cut of this What is Empathy? And problems abound, Nez Nation. But is that going to stop Professor Nez? Absolutely not. You got to roll with this. You got to adapt. And here's a really valuable lesson. First of all, welcome to Mindset Live. Thank you so much for joining us. If you're new here, this is a show where we talk about practical tools that you can use and implement today, okay, to avoid the torture of the psychological mind, okay? Not your natural mind, your psychological mind, the eternal doubter inside your head, that voice whose favorite word is can't. So welcome to the show. A very subdued kind of intro there. But I am extremely excited because I want to share with you, a better kind of video audio sync quality. I apologize for the beginning. I wanted to do another version of this because this is so important. And this happens all the time. I've been live streaming now since pretty much early 2016. And this is something that's going to be happening time and time again when you go live. Now, you can either choke, you can either clam up, or I think the best way to do it is to be very transparent and honest with your audience, right? So really kind of showing your audience that, hey, these things happen, especially when you go live. And I can see your chats. Thank you for joining. Hey, AKA real name Luis. Good to see you, Luis. Thank you for coming by. I'm trying to do another version of this What is Empathy video because it's so important and it's such a beautiful story that I want to produce another one. I've got so much to tell you and so much to communicate to you and so much other things going on that, if you're not aware, Nez Nation, I've been doing a brand new talk show on Facebook Live called Nez Nation Live. Hint, hint, hint. And it's just been super, super fun. It's always been a dream of mine to have a talk show. It's always been something I've wanted to do ever since I was a kid, ever since I watched Johnny Carson and Jay Leno and David Letterman, people like that, and just the amount of fun they had just doing something I love to do, which is have conversations. If you're new to the channel, I would love it if you would hit subscribe and hit that notification bell. That would be spectacular. Today's episode of Mindset Live, I want to talk about empathy and why it's so important, the benefits of empathy, and, what exactly, is the definition. The way that I characterize this, and I'd love to hear your comments too, Nez Nation, please leave comments. The way that I characterize empathy and the way that I, would define it is that this is something that you've been hearing a lot of in social media, something, and maybe you've been, or maybe you haven't, I don't know, something related to self-awareness, something related to compassion, but exactly what is empathy? Some people call it emotional intelligence. I'm going to tell you a little bit of a story, and I tried to tell this in the video prior, so if you're not new to Nez Nation, this may seem like a rerun. It's not. I just felt that the topic deserved video and audio sync, and there was a lot of technical problems, which happens. I'm not a technical person. I'm a creator. So technicalities happen, and you have to roll with the punches. You just have to, Nez Nation. You can't let those little things stop you, right? Not every broadcast is going to be a home run. Not everything you do, even if you are a so-called expert, is going to come out perfectly. It just doesn't exist. And if that stifles you, what the real purpose of this show, Mindset Live, is to, help avoid that kind of self-defeating mechanism, the self-defeating hater inside your head who's constantly telling you, you see, you made a mistake. You see, you thought you were going to do a final cut version of what is empathy, and look at all the problems. Look at all the issues that you're having. It's not going to stop me. I'm going to fight through that. Am I upset that this isn't going as smoothly as I'd hoped? Of course. Do I want it to be great? Of course. I'm hoping it is. Thank you so much for joining, guys. Really, really appreciate it. I can see the chat. So I tried to kind of tell this story yesterday, and I'm going to try again and convey it today. My definition of empathy and why I think it's so important. Empathy is your way of, I think, being more human, actually. I think empathy, and you can practice this, and everybody has this. We tend to focus on other facets of our personality and other facets of our mind. The psychological mind, the eternal doubter comes in there all the time and has his say. But empathy is really looking at the world, looking at things, perceiving things from another person's point of view, wearing a different pair of eyes for a change. And why this is so beneficial, I'm going to get into. And I think the best way to sort of relay that is by telling a little story. So if you don't know who I am, if you're new to this channel, I'm Professor Nez, and I'm a writing, communications, creative writing instructor, professor at the university level. I also teach online courses. I also do workshops and consult. I do it all. I mean, this is my gig. I'm a storyteller at heart. I love stories. Hence, I'm going to give you a really cool story, I think, to help. If you heard this broadcast yesterday, you might have noticed that the audio and video is out of sync. I'm hoping this will be a much better version. If it's not, I apologize. Again, I'm learning as I go. I'm not a technical person. Even though I've done a lot of these videos, it seems like every turn there's something that happens. And this is why I love live. Because I know what you might be thinking. Well, Professor Nez, you can always do pre-recorded videos. I mean, YouTube's sort of staple is pre-recorded, pre-edited, premeditated videos. I love live because it's that sense of intimacy that you don't get with pre-recorded material. I love pre-recorded videos. I have nothing against them, but it's that live. It makes me feel like I'm in the classroom, in the digital classroom, and I can relate to my audience. You can ask real-time questions. I can respond. If you are watching this on the replay, by the way, leave comments if you have any questions, because I check them vigorously if you are watching this on the replay, and I thank you for watching this on the replay. But I love live because it gives me a chance to really engage on a whole nother level with my audience and in real time. There's just nothing that really matches that. So looking at the world with a different pair of eyes, looking at a situation, a context through another point of view, not just your own. We as human beings, we are naturally, I think, inherently, maybe even hardwired to be self-centered and self-absorbed. It's very difficult sometimes to think about another person's perspective, and not to get mushy and all woo-woo-y, but on a very practical level, it hinders our ability to engage with people, to have relationships, to have fruitful exchanges, to have conversations that are meaningful, and really, bottom line, to understand why people think the way they do, why people perceive the way they do, why people react the way they do, why people allow for certain behaviors to come to the forefront of their existence, while others, seemingly more virtuous, take a back seat. I think that empathy is one of the greatest tools, and which is why I wanted to do a two-part series here. The first video really didn't work out that well. And by the way, let me know, give me some comments. Let me know if this is coming through okay. Thank you, Luis. I appreciate your comment. So I teach a storytelling class over at a local university. I teach in many universities all over the planet, pretty much. And, one of the assignments was a narrative essay. And this was something that you needed to basically, just to give you an overrun of the prompt. The prompt was for you to write about an incident in your life that you felt was a turning point and why that was a turning point, using description, using details, being very specific, and all the sort of normal, prompt characteristics and criteria for writing an effective essay. And in my class, I like to do a lot of workshops. I don't like to lecture. I don't like to hold very lecture-heavy classes. I like to have classes where there's a lot of practical, I use the word practical probably more than anybody because I think it's so important. Workshops and collaboration and a student-centered sort of atmosphere where it's not just me, sitting at the podium spouting, but we're working together. We're actually working on our projects. We're actually working with each other, looking at each other's work and trying to figure out why it's working, why it's not working, and how we can emulate that in the future. And so what I like to do a lot is I like to have a exercise where some people call it a fishbowl exercise. Some people call it just other people might just call it a solo workshop where each class member, each writer has a chance to basically share their work with the entire class, and then we spend the entire class focusing on that one person's work and commenting and reading and criticizing and giving feedback and, issuing our thoughts. And this is why empathy is so amazing, and this is why I think writing is a great tool for empathy, because you can get in the mind of a character, you can get in the mind and you can see the world through different cultures, perspectives, different individuals, different genders, different sexual orientation, economic status, right? So I had this student, and he, to not sound judgmental, but I have to be honest because it's just so easy to judge these kind of people. And I really felt that the entire class kind of had written him off as this stereotype. And I think we as human, I think I need to be transparent about this. I need to be really honest about this because, yes, there was a part of me that felt like, okay, this guy seems to fit the typical mold of one of these types of individuals. He was a very big, stocky dude, about 6'4", maybe 280. Muscle, wearing tank tops to class and sweatpants and sandals, and kind of had a real sort of, screw you kind of attitude, countenance, look on his face. And, very hardcore, and just seemed like he, didn't have a sensitive bone in his body, right? I mean, this is the kind of individual you'd see tattoos, like really just heavily painted up with tattoos. And you would think that, the way he looked at you, was this very hard, very standoffish, very kind of F-you type of glare, hardened glare, and not a lot of room, not a lot of, inviting, gestures and inviting body language, inviting facial expressions, very just, get away from me, who are you, right, kind of thing. And I think the entire class sort of had a consensus that was, what was happening, and that this individual wasn't too far-fetched to think that. And so it was his turn one day in class. Everybody had their turn, and I think he went about close to the last person to go, pretty close to the last person. And as these exercises go, the author will read their work out loud, and while the entire class will view it on the big screen, and I'll kind of scroll. So I have an overhead projection of their essay. They're reading it in class, and the entire class just listens very intently. We follow along all together on the board while he's reading it, and then once he's finished, we all start to have a discussion. And we all talk about what's working, what's not working. We try to give the author as much, constructive feedback as possible. And then I pass out guides, and we talk about very typical things: engaging beginning, making sure your thesis is clear, making sure you're backing up your points, making sure you use very concrete, descriptive language, and have a satisfying ending. And I pass out a guide. So he reads his story, And, I'm sure everybody had the presupposition that this was either going to be a story about, working out or, I don't know, um, going to, an event, a sporting event, or something, having to do with what his initial sort of physical presence communicated. Check this out, Nez Nation. Check out how powerful I thought this was, and I'd love to. And this is really the personification of empathy. This guy started to, in a very beautiful, actually almost poetic way, started to describe his relationship with his father. And not to give too much away, but there was a very tragic incident that occurred between him and his father. And his father died prematurely and died haphazardly when he was a young man. And here you see this big, burly, robust, tattooed, muscle-bound, bald beard, huge beard. I mean, this guy had a take on the world attitude. This guy had a get the hell out of my way type of, expression in his eye. Daggers. He had daggers for eyes. And he literally transformed into a 3-year-old toddler when he was reading his story out loud. And there was a couple of points where he just broke down and started crying. I mean, crying intensely, crying profusely. It was such a sight to behold. It was such a sight to behold in this nation. I never saw anything like it. One of the reasons I think I love the power of story, and I love the overwhelming truth when you really get to know somebody and you look past all the judgments, you look past the facade, you look past the exterior. And there was this unbelievable sensitive soul. There was this unbelievable caring, nurturing, compassionate, broken individual underneath that exterior. And my point is this, and this is what empathy is all about. It was such a powerful, powerful thing. And we all cried. Everybody cried in class. I mean, it was so moving. And there was not an individual in that class, myself included, that looked at that big burly dude the same ever again. We totally looked at him with a brand new pair of eyes. There wasn't this, this wasn't an individual who was, removed, or this wasn't an individual who was invincible, or this wasn't an individual who didn't care, or this wasn't an individual who didn't have feelings, or didn't have thoughts, dreams, desires, insecurities, right? Anxieties. He was a human being just like all of us. And he had some really deep-rooted, unbelievably provocative and stimulating things to say about life and about family and about fatherhood and parenting. And it was just so moving. If you pass this dude on the sidewalk or the street walk or the mall or Walmarts of life, you wouldn't think anything of that. That would never come to mind. And this is where the reminder needs to kick in, Nez Nation. This is, I think, the whole crux of empathy. And especially I think it's more prudent when you're faced with people who are giving you their maybe not so pleasant vibe, or not so inviting, or not so, not so positive experience, that you encounter with people through the hallways and byways of life. We're so quick to judge. We're so quick to judge. We're so quick to assume. We're so quick to cast them in a box, right? But I think the whole point of empathy, the whole point of this broadcast, the whole point of this video, if you're watching this in the replay, I completely am appreciative. The whole point of this is that you never know what people are dealing with. You never know what's underneath. You think you know. You think you know. And if you really dig deep into this, if you really marinate in this idea of empathy, and there's a difference between empathy and enabling, okay? We're not talking about just, giving everybody, giving everybody a sort of just free pass, to be a jerk, or free pass to not be, a model sort of contributing, engaging, positive citizen or what have you, whatever the hell that means. I don't even know what the hell that means, but it's just about giving people a chance because you would want that in return. It's just about looking through their eyes, looking through their experience, feeling what perhaps may be going on with them, and understanding that what you see is such a tiny micromolecule of who they are, that there's so much more to them. There's so much, and actually to think of this from a practical framework and a context, it alleviates you from, because judging is poisonous, and judging others leads to or begets self-judging. The less you judge of others, the less you judge of yourself. So let's look at this from a practical standpoint, not a mushy standpoint, even though I was total mush when this dude read his story. I mean, I was absolute mush. I could even relate to some of the, experiences that he had with his father that were not so, let's say, not so appealing, not so positive. And just from a practical standpoint, right? I mean, next time you're greeted with somebody who you may think like, oh God, what a jerk, or he cut me off at the freeway, or what a jerk, he, just almost bumped into me walking past me at Target, or just the sight of them can sometimes incite. Judgments really, they just bubble up on their own. You don't have to try. There's no effort. There's literally no effort with judgment. It takes great effort to step back from judgment, right? I thought that was just a really good example of, understanding more about that human connection, understanding that people have the same things that you have. They want to be just doing the best they can. Nez Nation, nobody knows what they're doing. I tell my students this all the time. Nobody knows what they're doing, from the president to the custodian. Nobody knows what the hell they're doing. Everybody's just doing the best they can. Anybody who tells you, anybody who's conveying that they are perfect or they got it all figured out, be very, very leery of that, I would say. Be very wary of that. I talk about mindsets, and all my books are about fear and transcending that psychological, torturous mind. Doesn't mean that Professor Nez is perfect. I still have my bad days, believe you me. As a matter of fact, just to get really, really real here for a second, I mean, just the other morning, I woke up and that psychological mind completely just had his way with me. And I gave in. I resigned myself to him momentarily. Thank God it was temporary. It used to be something way longer than temporary, which is why, I write and speak about this all the time, because in my 20s, especially my early 20s, it really just had its way with me, and there was little to zero understanding on my part, nor resistance. I just felt like, well, that's just the way it is. Whatever the eternal doubter says must be true. Whatever that voice inside here that just pecks must be true. This happened literally the other night. I woke up. What are you doing? The voice was telling me. What are you doing? What do you think you're doing? You think you're a creator? What is this mindset life shit that you're doing? You actually think that you're doing something? You actually think that you're having an impact? Who are you to think you can have a talk show on Facebook Live? Who are you to think that you could be a video creator? Who are you to even have the audacity to create anything? I mean, I think those of you who are watching who are creators can maybe relate to that. And I think this is the most important thing on the planet is people project an image. Having empathy is a way of becoming more human yourself. Having empathy is a way of understanding others. The more you understand others, the more you understand yourself. The more you understand yourself, the less judgment you bestow on others. And the less judgment you bestow on others, the less judgment you bestow on yourself. It's really as practical and simple as that. I'm really glad. I feel good. I'm really glad that I got this video out today. I'm doing a kind of hiatus. It's Saturday, March, what is this, the 18th? It's Saturday, March 18th, 2017, and I need to spend some time with my family, which is what I'm going to do today, but I was lucky enough to have an opportunity to do this. I hope you got some value out of this, Nez Nation. I hope this was helpful. The next time somebody crosses you, the next time somebody, just very simply, just irritates you or annoys you or incites a lot of frustration, anger, and hate in you, right? Think about this video. Think about Professor Nez. Think about empathy. Try to look at it from their point of view. Try to put yourself, okay, in their eyeballs, if you will. Try to think that what could really be going on here? What could really be happening here? How do I understand this better? Try to turn the volume down on your own ego just for a couple of seconds. And don't assume that they're just being jerks. Don't assume that they're just atrocious people. Don't just assume that, well, that's just the way they are. Really take the time to, and again, this is really self-beneficial. This is for self-care. It's not about giving people, some people think, well, by doing that, you're letting people off the hook. No, you're letting yourself off the hook. You're letting yourself off the hook, which is the only hook that matters, really. Nez Nation, I hope you got a lot of value out of this. Again, just to remind you, you are watching Mindset Live with your favorite professor, Professor Nez. This is a show where we talk about practical tools that you can apply today to thwart the torture and molestation of the psychological mind. I can't think of anything more important. I hope you enjoyed this. If you enjoyed this, please comment. If you're watching this on the replay, please share and subscribe. Click that subscribe button. Click that subscribe button, and you'll always be notified when I go live on Mindset Live. And if you're interested, go to Facebook and follow me at Professor Nez. I would love it. I would really appreciate it. My new talk show, it's a little different from Mindset Live, even though there's little sprinkles of this in there. It's just people having conversations about interesting things. Really, it's a loose format, and I'm very proud of it. I'm very pumped. And I hope you can come join me. Thank you, thank you, thank you so much, Nez Nation. This is Professor Nez signing off.